In the world of cinema, it's important not to waste a single frame. Every single moment of it should convey an emotion or push the story forward. But we're not just talking about plot-heavy scenes or iconic shots. We're looking at the visuals that directors put a painstaking amount of effort into, despite lasting less than a second. But one should never underestimate the impact that inserting a split second of footage can have on viewers if done correctly. If utilized effectively, a jump cut can heighten tension, emphasize the joke, or give you the fright of your life. By not including these brief shots, you might view a character, a scene, or the whole plot in a different way. I'm Jess from What Culture, and here are 10 split-second movie shots you will never forget. Number 10. Eye Pop. Twilight Zone the movie. Twilight Zone the movie concludes with a recreation of the classic episode Nightmare at 20,000 Feet. The segment begins with anxious flyer John Valentine suffering a panic attack in an airplane lavatory. After returning to his seat, he does all he can to relax. When John suspects there's something on the plane's wing, he tries to ignore it. As he becomes increasingly agitated, he peers out his window, only to be greeted by a leering gremlin. Not only does this demonic-looking critter look absolutely terrifying, the whole scene is accentuated by the unnerving music, seamless editing, perfect lighting, and Lithgow's compelling performance. But it's actually not the gremlin that makes you jump out of your skin, it's John's reaction. Upon coming face to face with the monstrous creature, there's a momentary shot of John's eyes popping out of their sockets. These frames appear so quickly, many viewers assume they imagined it. If this shot lasted a little longer, it could have come across as cartoonish and silly. Because the shot is held for the right amount of time, it makes this already scary scene even scarier. Number 9. Head flop. Smile. Smile opens with psychiatrist Rose Cotter witnessing a patient killing herself after claiming she's been tormented by an ever-grinning shapeshifter. While on sabbatical, Rose learns the same malevolent force is hounding her. As the entity continues to harass Rose, her mental state quickly unravels. When her sister Holly tells her she's acting like their mother before she took her own life, Rose storms to her car in a huff. As Rose collects her thoughts, Holly can be spotted in the background, slowly making her way towards the vehicle. Even though we know at this stage that a jump scare is coming, no one's quite ready for what actually happens. After Rose looks up at Holly, her sister's head swings around 180 degrees, sneering at her gleefully. What makes this shot more impressive is the fact that it could have looked really stupid. Despite being a part of the original script, director and writer Parker Finn said it was, quote, something that everyone around me was trying to wrap their head around. It's fortunate that Parker stuck to his guns and kept it in, as it's absolutely the best jump scare in the whole film. Number 8. Jack's death. Brokeback Mountain. Brokeback Mountain tells the story of two cowboys, Jack and Ennis, who engage in a forbidden love affair. Knowing they'll be arrested or murdered if their true selves come to light, the two go their separate ways, hoping to end their relationship. Try as they might, they're unable to suppress their feelings for one another, causing a major conflict. And after nearly 20 years, Ang Lee's love drama hasn't lost an ounce of its power. When Ennis receives a postcard stating Jack has died, he rings his wife Lorraine to learn what happened. She gives a long and elaborate explanation, claiming a tire blew out in her husband's face, knocking Jack out, causing him to drown in his own blood. While Lorraine goes through the details, we see several jump cuts, depicting a gang of bigots taking Jack into a field before bludgeoning him to death with a tire iron. It happened so quickly, it's hard to process what we saw. Nevertheless, it is devastatingly made abundantly clear how Jack really succumbed to his fate. Number 7. Funk. Hereditary. It's hard to select just one split-second shot from Ari Aster's classic Hereditary, as there are just so many options to choose from that are absolutely traumatizing. Annie crawling on the roof, the naked worshipper in the woods, the headless corpse floating in the treehouse, Annie repeatedly slamming her head off the attic door. However, nothing is sure to freak you out more than what happens to Charlie. While at a party, Charlie eats chocolate cake, unaware it's been cut by a knife that was used to chop walnuts. Due to her nut allergy, Charlie goes into anaphylactic shock, urging her brother Peter to drive her to the hospital. While Peter is driving at 100 miles per hour, Claire feels like she can't breathe, which compels her to stick her head out the window. At the same moment, Peter swerves to avoid hitting a deer, causing his sister to slam her head into a pole. Although you can barely see what happened, the sickening crunch that accompanies the impact is sure to turn your stomach 10 times over. Long after the movie's over, you'll still feel utterly shaken by how Charlie met her demise. Number 6. Mouth tear. Upgrade. In this quasi-RoboCop remake, quadriplegic Grey Trace is given the chance to avenge his murdered wife after an AI chip called STEM turns him into a killing machine. After identifying one of his wife's assailants, Cirque, Grey decides to investigate the perp's house for clues. When Cirque arrives home, a fight ensues, forcing STEM to take control of Trace's body. As Cirque attempts to stab him with a butcher knife, Grey nabs the weapon out of his hand, driving it into the criminal's back. STEM then compels Grey to place the blade in Cirque's mouth sideways and ram it backwards, ripping his face open from ear to ear. Although Upgrade certainly has its fair share of violence, we've seen nothing this graphic up to this point in the movie, which is why, although fleeting, it absolutely leaves an impact as a memorable moment. Interestingly, this literal jaw-dropper packs a bigger punch if you watched Upgrade's trailer. Even though this sequence is shown in the teaser, the camera goes black before Cirque receives his Glaswegian smile. If you assume the scene would play out the same way while watching the movie, you were in for a rude awakening. Number 5. The Vanisher, Deadpool 2. Promotions for Deadpool 2 leaned big into the fact that this sequel would introduce the iconic super team X-Force. Based on the trailers, it looked like Paulie D's mutant squad would kick some serious ass. But in typical Deadpool fashion, the debut of X-Force was deliberately anticlimactic. As the group prepare for their first mission, each of them are killed off in brutal and hilarious fashion. However, the most notable death goes to the invisible superhero, the Vanisher. After Deadpool's unseen teammate gets fried to a crisp by an electric wire, we get a shot of the Vanisher's mug, revealing he's played by Brad Pitt. Interestingly, the Vanisher's identity was never intended to be a part of the original script, but ultimately, the creative team decided this was a great opportunity for an A-list cameo. Since Brad Pitt was already interested in working on the movie and was regarded as, quote, the hardest to get in Hollywood, the Oscar-winning actor fit the bill perfectly. Despite the fact that Deadpool 2 is loaded with jokes, the Vanisher gag is definitely the best one, despite lasting a quarter of a second. Number 4. The Face of the Demon, The Exorcist. It's hard to argue whether there's a horror movie that's created more iconic shots than The Exorcist. The spider walk, the crucifix scene, the 360-degree head turn, the projectile vomit sequence, the light from Reagan's window shining down on Father Merrin, the statue appearing in the bedroom, and, of course, the exorcism ritual itself. But one of The Exorcist's most memorable moments is when we get our first glimpse of our antagonist, Pazuzu. Shortly after meeting Reagan, Father Karras has a dream where he spots his deceased mother on the street. While running towards her, a single frame of Pazuzu's demonic face flashes on the screen. Surprisingly, this particular shot is not presented as a jump scare. Unlike most jump scares, there's no blaring noise trying to get you to jump. Also, the image appears so quickly you barely have time to register it. Even though you know you saw something, you'd struggle to describe Pazuzu's appearance. While this shot doesn't scare you out of your wits, it leaves you unnerved. Although Pazuzu reveals his true form briefly during the exorcism later on, his first appearance is scarier since we were completely unready for it. Number 3. The Homeless Person, Mulholland Drive. If you haven't seen Mulholland Drive in a while, you may not remember what it's about. Heck, even if you finished watching it about 5 minutes ago, you still might have no clue what you just witnessed. Whether you've seen this David Lynch classic yesterday or a decade ago, there's one scene that should have remained firmly rooted in your mind. Near the opening, Dan is at a dinner with Herb, discussing a nightmare he had where he encountered a horrifying homeless person behind the building. To shake off his haunting dream, Herb encourages Dan to have a look around the diner. As he cautiously approaches the side of the building, a homeless person does indeed appear from the side of the building, looking absolutely terrifying. And as a result, Dan and us as viewers collapse from fear. Because this moment is built up for a solid 5 minutes, we should have seen the jump scare coming a mile away. Despite the massive heads up, it still managed to scare the life out of us. Despite having little connection to the overarching narrative, this moment is sure to be embedded in your memory banks forever. Number 2. Burning Alive, St. Maud. In St. Maud, our titular nurse fails to save a patient, causing her to have a crisis of faith and identity. When she's tasked with caring for a terminally ill atheist called Amanda, Maud believes this is her chance to redeem herself. While our protagonist attempts to help Amanda reclaim her faith, she's constantly plagued by supernatural visions. Because of Maud's mental instability, it's impossible to tell if these apparitions are real or not. During the climax, Amanda takes on a demonic form, compelling Maud to kill her. Believing she's completed her spiritual quest, Maud heads to the beach the following morning and sets herself alight. Rather than bursting into flame, our eponymous character sprouts two angelic wings, urging bystanders to drop to their knees and bask in her awe. Maud gazes at her admirers and smiles, believing she's about to enter the kingdom of heaven. Then the rug's pulled out from under us. In the final shot, Maud screams in agony as the fire peels the black flesh from her bones. Only then do we realize that Maud's visions didn't come from God after all, but rather simply her deluded mind. Number 1. Finding Kay's body, the last King of Scotland. The Last King of Scotland centers around Ugandan dictator Idi Amin and his relationship with his personal doctor and confidant, Nicholas Garrigan. Because of Amin's reputation as a tyrant, Garrigan is deeply skeptical about working alongside him at first, but due to the deranged king's natural charisma, Garrigan is won over by him. Although the good doctor is repeatedly made aware of Amin's war crimes, he does stick by his side. However, that's not for long. When Garrigan has an affair with Amin's wife Kay, she falls pregnant. When she attempts to flee, she's apprehended by Amin's men. When Garrigan is brought to an autopsy room shortly after, we're expecting him to find Kay's corpse. Unfortunately, what he finds is much, much worse. As he enters the room, he finds Kay's body, with her arms surgically attached to her leg sockets, and vice versa. Recognizing the evil harboring within Amin, Garrigan collapses to the ground. But we're not thinking about Nicholas Garrigan in that moment, since we're still in shock by what we just witnessed. Although the film never shies away from Amin's barbarism, we've seen nothing this gruesome up until now. We only get a snippet of Kay's body, but it's enough to make viewers recoil in disgust. That's the end of our list, but let me know down in that comment section which split-second movie shots you will absolutely not be forgetting anytime soon. As always, I've been Jess from What Culture. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. If you like, you can come say hi to me on my Twitter account where I'm at Jess McDonald, but make sure you stay tuned to us here for plenty more great lists.